No.
Contemporary issues in football. Gender in football in schools is a contemporary issue, as nowadays boys get more opportunities in sport over girls. So, like, this is shown in sports channels. Men's football gets a lot of coverage, whereas women's football doesn't. In schools nowadays, they still have to be equal and offer opportunities to both boys and girls, whether a girl wants to play football or a boy wants to play, say, a female-dominated sport like netball. Generally in sport, officials tend to be males, but recently there has been one female linesman called Sean Massey, and her first game in the Premier League was on the 28th of December 2010. Andy Gray, a Sky Sports pundit, made a sexist comment about her and got fired due to it. What he said was on live air that females don't know the offside rule, so he got fired for that. Short and long-term effects on football. School schemes will increase the participation of girls in male-dominated sports, i.e. football. Increase popularity of sport due to media exposure and sponsorship for players, girls, boys. Long-term effects, causes women to lose interest in the sport if there's no recognition. Men's game will become more dominant and they'll get all the coverage. That links to the previous point. Lack of leagues/teams will drive women away from the sport. Long exposure of women's football will increase the number of spectators. And kits will have to be specially designed to fit women, as they've got male kits and they need female kits if women's football has become bigger. Drugs. Drugs are not accepted in the sport. There's a zero tolerance policy. Many athletes have been caught and banned from misusing drugs. One person who's been caught out for misusing a certain illegal substance for performance enhancement was Diego Maradona. He was allegedly on drugs when he was at his prime, and due to this could have improved his game. Many drug tests are taken regularly by a company affiliated with the FA. This test is not always accurate, as back in 2011, Tolo Torre was mistakenly accused of taking performance-enhancing drugs, whereas it's part of his weight loss medication. Short-term and long-term effects on football. Temporary performance increase for a short-term effect. Negative media coverage if found out. Loss of respect in sponsorship. Results of games would be affected, as one player would stand out and, let's say, score more goals due to being on drugs. It could cause a player to be sacked if found out. Long-term effects. Loss of respect in sponsorship. Sponsors won't want to sponsor someone who's known to be on drugs. Loss of followers and fans, so they'll be driven away from the football clubs. And football clubs will lose money due to this, the loss of footballers and loss of fans. So it could cause a player to be sacked if regular offender. That's the course of action. So if they don't get found out first, but then they get found out later, then they're obviously going to get sacked, and that's a long-term effect. Young children could see it as good because their role model is doing it. If a player is a role model and they're known to take drugs to enhance their performance, then young children might see it as the way to be. Religion and racism in football. Many footballers nowadays are from different faith and different ethnicities to teammates, yet they still work together effectively. Many players in the past 10 years have been racially abused. One example of this was between John Terry and Anton Ferdinand. John Terry was banned for 4 games and was fined £220,000 for this racist comment. Many clubs promote a scheme called Kick Racism Out of Football, and designed to stop racism in football and overall. One example of these clubs is Notts County Football in the Community, who run the Let's Kick Racism Out of Football scheme. Short-term effects, loss of respect for the player, can lead to threats from the public. Setting a bad example to young viewers, like I said, if young children see it, their idol doing this, then they might see it as the right idea. Negative exposure about the sport. Loss of respect for players and clubs, as they'll be known to be a racist. Loss of title as a role model. So, young children, if they know it's bad, then they won't see them as a role model. It could cause a player to lose their job if a regular offender. It could cause a player to be sold or lose a contract with the club. It's a serious case. Deviance. Deviance is used by many clubs and players in order to gain advantage over their opposition. One example of deviance is match fixing. There have been many cases of match fixing lately. Diving is used by many players in leagues in order to gain advantages over opposition. The most predominant player who's renowned for his diving is Iron Robin. The Dutch international dived in the last 16 of the World Cup against Mexico to get a penalty. Most clubs in the world ensure that players are behaving and staying out of trouble and against crime. One example of being convicted of a crime was Nile Ranger. He was allegedly damaged a vehicle after a row with a taxi driver in Liverpool city centre at around 6 a.m. Short and long-term effects of football. Loss of respect for a player, constant deviance, so like diving, if they're constantly diving then they're just going to lose a lot of respect. Can lead to threat from the public, well, that's a criminal type of thing. Setting bad examples to young viewers, that's under the role model again. If they see it from a role model, then they might think it's the right idea to do. Negative exposure about the sport. Long-term effects. Loss of respect for player and clubs. Loss of the title of the role model is to be classed as cheating. Could cause a player to lose their job if a regular offender, and could cause a player to be sold or lose a contract with the club. Politics and health initiatives. Politics is a key area in football, because if the sport doesn't get enough funding it requires, then clubs can't run specific programmes to get involved in the community. Examples of funded schemes in the community are football in the community, Let's Kick Races Mount Football, On the Ball, Kicks, and Pan Disability. These programmes are designed in order to get the community involved in football and also designed to keep young children off the streets and out of trouble. Health initiatives are programmes especially designed to work with school children to get them interested in helping the community and staying out of trouble. Short and long-term effects on football. Short-term effects. It gets people off the street causing trouble. It gets people involved in football. So it's like exercise. It could cause some schemes to fold and be abandoned due to not enough funding. But it could also cause them to get more funding. It could take jobs away if funding is cut. Long-term effects, increase club reputation in the community, which is quite a big thing. That's a media exposure as well. Positive press for the clubs involved in the community, they are media exposure. Could produce more jobs if funding is available, and could make more people healthy due to the exercise available. So if they've got certain schemes that they need to go to, or can go to, they're more likely to become fit. Commercialisation and globalisation. Sorry, commercialism and globalisation. Commercialism is designed to make club as much profit as possible. One example of this is the ticket prices that clubs charge. For example, Arsenal, I think, charge the highest for entrance into games. One example is the merchandise that's sold in shops, so club t-shirts, club kits. They're all designed for supporters to show that they support the team used in exercise, but it makes the club a lot of money due to the high prices. Due to the price of everything being extremely high as well, it has a knock-on effect of the price of footballers and the price of footballers' wages. So, for example, Wayne Rooney's earning 330k a week, which is a lot, which would have gone up over the years as football is increasingly getting money dominated. Press reporters are prone to twisting stories in order to increase sales and make their company look better. That's about football. Globalisation is the expansion of football through media, i.e. the internet, social media and television. An example of the globalisation is the FIFA World Cup, as it's shown all around the world and everybody can watch. Other examples are the FA Cup, Europa League and Champions League. Short-term and long-term effects on football. Short-term effects could drive supporters away due to expensive prices, as some people might not be able to afford it. Can make the club a lot of money by selling merchandise, especially if they've signed a new player. An example of this was Real Madrid when they signed Gareth Bale. There was a lot of sales of Real Madrid shirt with Bale on the back. Sponsorship deals can provide a lot of money to the player in the clubs. So, cause people to be driven away from participating due to not being financially able to. So that's like football boots. Long-term effects could lead to football being more money-orientated, i.e. prices are getting higher. Could lead to clubs folding due to not enough money coming into the club. So little clubs, that's mainly little clubs.
Could lead to clubs fall. Oh, sorry, I've just said that. Could lead to